There's something many married couples experience but rarely talk about openly. At one point in the relationship, physical intimacy felt natural. Connection was easy. Time together seemed to happen without effort. But somewhere along the way, it started happening less and less. Not always because of conflict. Sometimes it was exhaustion. Sometimes it could have been stress. Sometimes it could be health challenges. And sometimes it was the hurt that was never fully addressed. And before couples realize it, the closeness they once shared slowly fades into the background of the daily life. But God didn't design marriage for distance. In 1 Corinthians 7, verse 3, the Apostle Paul reminds married couples that intimacy meant to be a place of mutual care inside the covenant. Not pressure, not obligation, but connection. Today, we're talking about how couples can rebuild that connection intentionally, even when life has created distance.
From friends to lovers,
to kisses and cuddles,
we are doing it
God's way.
This is Stronger Together, Closer to God.
Many marriages don't lose intimacy because couples stop loving each other. They lose it because life slowly got louder than their connection. Schedules filled up. Energy runs low. Responsibilities multiply. And what once felt natural begins to feel awkward to talk about. And the connection that once felt natural slowly becomes something couples assume will happen later. But later often never comes. When intimacy begins to fade, several pressures can quietly grow inside the relationship. One spouse may feel rejected or undesired. The other may feel pressure or misunderstood. Conversations about intimacy become awkward or avoided. Sometimes deeper challenges are involved. Unresolved emotional hurt, stress and exhaustion, health concerns, normal challenges, or simply years of neglecting intentional time together. Over time, what started as life being busy can turn into emotional distance. And you said this earlier. Physical distance usually starts with emotional distance. Left unaddressed, avoidance quietly erodes covenant. But here is the encouragement Scripture gives. God never designed intimacy in marriage to be a reward system or a pressure system. As we said earlier, intimacy is not a reward system, it's a relationship system. In 1 Corinthians 7:3, Paul reminds couples that intimacy in marriage is meant to be mutual care. That means couples can talk honestly, rebuild connection slowly, intentionally create space for closeness again. And when couples pursue intimacy with grace, patience, and intentionality, the connection that once faded can begin to grow again. See, in 1 Corinthians 7:3, the New King James Version says the husband should fulfill his marital duties to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The Message version gives it in a little more clear context. The marriage bed must be a place of mutuality. See, the Apostle Paul was writing to the believers in Corinth, a culture full of confusion about sexuality and relationships. Some people believed intimacy could be used selfishly, while others thought spiritual devotion meant avoiding it completely. Paul corrects both extremes. He reminds married couples that intimacy inside marriage is meant to be mutual care within the covenant, not one-sided, not manipulative, not avoided, but shared. This is where the key word mutuality becomes powerful. Both spouses are responsible for protecting the connection of the relationship. Both spouses protect it. Both spouses nurture it. This is why intimacy is not about performance. It's about connection and care. See, in Genesis 2:24, we are reminded that this is why a man leaves his father and mother and bonds with his wife, and they become one flesh. This first appears in the creation account before sin even entered the world. God defines marriage as a new covenant relationship where two lives become deeply united. One flesh doesn't just describe the physical union. It describes holistic unity, spiritual unity, emotional unity, mental unity, physical unity. Marriage was designed so spouses can experience deep connection across every part of life, which means physical intimacy begins to disappear. It is often the sign that other areas of connection may need attention too. Please remember this phrase. Physical distance usually starts with emotional distance. See, in Songs of Solomon, chapter 7, verse 8, we are reminded that I know I am my lover's prize, and he desires me. Songs of Solomon is a poetic celebration of romantic love inside marriage. Rather than ignoring desire, Scripture actually honors it as part of God's design for married couples. The language here reflects mutual affection and pursuit. Healthy marriages include desire, admiration, affection, enjoyment for one another. This reminds couples that intimacy in marriage is not something to feel embarrassed about. It is something God designs to strengthen unity. When we place these passages together, a clear picture forms. Genesis shows us God's design for unity. Songs of Solomon celebrates desire and affection. And 1 Corinthians explains the mutual responsibility to care for that connection, which leads to an important truth. Intimacy doesn't drift by accident. It declines by neglect. But the good news is that couples can rebuild connection intentionally. So I'm going to give you 4 tools to help you out. 4 tools that will hopefully bring back that physical intimacy together within your relationship. The first tool is conversation starter. Initiate a gentle, honest conversation about intimacy. But don't do this during a conflict or even late at night when both spouses are exhausted. Choose a calm moment and say something like, I miss the closeness we used to have. I really like us to reconnect and protect time for each other again. How have you been feeling about this part of our relationship? Why this works? Because many couples avoid this conversation because it feels uncomfortable. But as we said earlier, what we won't talk about, we won't heal. A calm conversation removes assumptions and opens the door for understanding instead of pressure. For example, a couple may discover just by asking that question, one spouse feels emotionally disconnected while the other spouse feels rejected. Both actually desire closeness, but don't know how to start. That conversation becomes the first step towards rebuilding connection. Here's the second tool. Take a 2 to 5 minute reset. Start rebuilding connection with small intentional moments of affection. For example, sit together and hold hands for a few minutes. Hug intentionally for 20 to 30 seconds. Cuddle while talking about the day. Sit close while praying together. Physical intimacy often grows from emotional safety and consistent affection. Small moments signal, I still choose you. That helps rebuild comfort and closeness over time. For example, couples who start with simple affections daily often find deeper intimacy begins to return naturally. Here's the third tool. Start scheduling intentional time. Protect time for your relationship just as you would for any other priorities. This might look like scheduling a weekly connection night, putting uninterrupted time on the calendar, planning moments where the focus is simply getting to be together. This removes the we'll get to it later trap. Why this works? Because life will always compete for attention. You got to remember, the enemy tries to kill, steal, and destroy time that is opportunities for physical intimacy. Intentional scheduling communicates our relationship matters enough to protect it. Remember, intimacy is not a reward system. It's a relationship system. So, for example, couples who schedule connection time often rediscover that desire grows when space for connection exists. The goal is that couples will move from quiet frustration to understanding, to hope, to intentional actions. So what does that mean? That means couples realize we're not on this island alone. We're not the only ones experiencing this. They recognize that married marriages experiences seasons where intimacy declines, often because life pressures and stress or unresolved challenges. This removes shame. In the understanding, listeners begin to see that intimacy struggles are often connected to emotional distance, unspoken hurt, exhaustion, life transitions, health factors. This helps couples like you shift from blame to curiosity. Instead of asking, why aren't we close anymore? Try begin asking, what has it been affecting our connection? And if you keep doing this, this will bring hope. Scripture reframes intimacy as a mutual care inside covenant. Couples hear that rebuilding intimacy doesn't require perfection, but it requires conversation, patience, listening, intentional connection. They begin to believe maybe we can rebuild this. And that leads to action. The emotional shift leads couples to take steps discussed earlier, like starting an honest conversation, rebuilding affection slowly, scheduling intentional time together, or even address barriers openly. Intimacy doesn't fade because love disappeared. More often, it fades because life crowded out intentional connection. But what life crowded out, couples can choose to restore. See, we have the authority to restore it. God gave us that authority. So let's take advantage of it through conversation, through patience, through mutual care. Remember, God's designed intimacy in marriage as connection, not obligation. If you're in a season right now where intimacy becomes difficult or distant, don't lose hope. Rebuilding connection rarely happens instantly, but small steps taken together can lead to meaningful change. So start with a conversation. Create intentional time together. Remove the barriers that have made closeness difficult, and allow intimacy to once again become a place of mutual care inside your covenant. Let me close out in a blessing to you and to your relationship. May God strengthen the unity in your marriage. May He restore closeness where distance have grown. And may your relationship reflect the love, grace, and connection He designed for covenant marriage. Thank you for listening to Stronger Together, Closer to God. I hope and pray that this message was a blessing to you. If you would like to contribute to our ministry, feel free to email us at s2c2gpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's s2c2gpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you again for taking the time to listen to our message. We hope and pray that you will be able to be a blessing to others and especially bring many more people stronger together, closer to God. Take care and have a wonderful day.